sometimes the challenging thing to do, and that the ability to feel, evolve, hold space for hard things is not only human, but it's like necessary. So it's kind of hard to unwrap all of that, because there's a lot of things I knew in the beginning of my life, which is that story is the most important, and that love is what binds us all, really.
Mhm.
And you can call that God, you can call that universe, you can call that whatever.
I'm so glad you're joining us today. I have a very special guest, fellow podcaster, my friend, Jo Beth, who's here to share some incredible stories. She's a true artist, both in her salon and in life, crafting connections that resonate deeply with magic. So get comfy. It's just you, me, and Jo Beth today. Let's dive into a conversation that I promise will be as enriching as it is inspiring. Jo Beth, thanks for being here in the podcast. I welcome you, my friend.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you. That bright smile on a Monday morning. I love it.
Thank you.
I love
Let's
it.
dive right into this inspiring and insightful conversation. So, can you share the earliest memory you have of connecting deeply with someone who might have been older than yourself?
Totally. And it's a big part of my story, my podcast, my life. Is I was 3 years old, and they took me and my cousins to see my great grandmother, Mama, Jewel Roberts, who was a deeply intuitive person from what I gather. She was in a nursing home, and I would wander away to speak to this man named Mr. Bird. So I was like 3, and I would sit by him and ask questions. And there was some type of soul warmth, wisdom connection there. So that is my earliest memory, of being happy to be with my family and to go see my grandmother, but to specifically go sit by Mr. Bird. Yeah.
Why Mr. Bird?
I have no idea. I mean, I can see myself at like 3, maybe 4, sitting next to his bed. I can't really see what he looked like, but he was a person that I would sit by. I gather just the way it was set up that I was there without my parents, because it was a thing where I would sit with him whenever we would go, and then one day he wasn't there, and I was really upset about it. Um, but I want to almost say, like, that's the first memory where I really understood that it's a necessity to sit by wisdom.
Mm. At 3 years
It's
old?
yeah. Yeah. I mean, and yeah, it's so important, and I hold a reverence to it. But even like sitting there, I can't necessarily remember anything he said, but it was a warmth and like exchange back and forth. And that's something that definitely made a mark on me, and absolutely still, lights me up with what I do.
The dogs are going at it. That's why I'm like, hold on. Hey,
Oh, that's okay.
go lay down. You guys are laying down, and now I start. Lay down. They're
Oh
like, let's
goodness.
play now. Okay. Now I just
Waited
ruined
for
it.
this
You
moment.
just ruined it.
It's okay.
No way. I'm like, you guys can't. All right.
They waited for this moment,
They waited for you. They want to know about Mr. Bird.
right? Right?
Okay. So, Mr. Bird,
Yeah.
3 years old, sitting by
Yeah.
wisdom.
Yeah.
What after that? Do you remember a time in your childhood after that where you thought there's something to this? Like there's something to stories. There's something to reading other people's stories or sharing other people's stories. Like where did that interest come from?
I don't know other than to tell you that it's like in me. Like it motivates me, it drives me. I had a dad who was very much into Amway, and so very much into like motivational tapes. And so there's something about like the will to keep going that really connects to the inside parts of me. I mean, there's so much you could talk about because my dad is a very electric person. He is a very glass half full kind of guy, like really. Um, he is a mover and a shaker and a people connector. So he's always been somebody who appreciates story in the way of like overcoming. And so, to listen to motivational tapes with my dad in a Cadillac growing up is like what I did, and oh my God, now I'm going to cough. Um,
It's okay.
the dogs, now I start coughing. I'll probably break out my inhaler in a second, but no, there's something about like the stepping stones of life that it is the way my mind works. So, like, for instance, I talk a lot about my best friend, Sabrina, a lot about her. And I think people are like, oh, isn't that sweet? They were besties in high school. And it's like, yes, but Sabrina and I had very similar family dynamics. Our dads are really important to us. They did a lot of the emotional, like heavy lifting. Her and I were deeply evangelical. And, I can think about our friendship. Okay. So here's our friendship. And I literally in my mind can see like the moments where I came at her with my Jo Bethness or my doubting myself because I was letting other people do it. And Sabrina would say things to me, even in our conservative uh, theology or way of thinking, but she had a way of like handing me humility or handing me truth about who I was or who God is. And it transformed and definitely went past the boxes that we were very much in. And so when I think about her with her psychology degree and her biblical studies degree and like her walking through the past 20 years of my life, I can see it. Like I can see the stepping stones and like the things that would happen or the people like her who loved me enough to remind me who I was when I was maybe not as tethered to myself as I could have been, or for lots of different reasons, But my mind thinks in the way of like miraculous pivots in people's lives. And, in the past 3 years, I have really understood, just like you said in our first meeting, like pain is part of being human, but suffering is a choice. And so the past 3 years have totally taught me that the right thing to do is sometimes the challenging thing to do. And that the ability to feel, evolve, hold space for hard things is not only human, but it's like necessary. So it's kind of hard to unwrap all of that because there's a lot of things I knew in the beginning of my life, which is that story is the most important and that love is what binds us all, really.
Mhm.
And you can call that God, you can call that universe, you can call that whatever, but it's been fun and it is fun to get back to those two things.
So, what is a miraculous pivot for you?
Oh my God, a miraculous pivot is furnishing an apartment while you're deciding to get separated and understanding that I furnished the entire apartment out of will, determination, hard work. A pivot is realizing that I had a pretty good example of somebody close to me in my life that didn't take any accountability of the way that they took care of their body or their emotional health, and understanding when my kids were little that I would not allow them to see a woman that lets life pass them by. And so a pivot for me was like August 1st of 2015 or 2016, where I was like, I will not diet anymore. I will not do it. I will eat all day whenever I, you know, am hungry. and you got these ladies for the past 2 decades, 3 decades counting calories and dressing, and I ain't doing that shit anymore. So like I will pivot. Um, and then how people do it. Great example. I was hired at a cutting salon um, after I worked at Amazon. So I worked at Amazon in the first part of the separation because I needed a job. I was hired there seasonally. It was really challenging to speak to people because I was going through so many hard things privately. And I'm a people person. I like to talk. So Amazon, cool. Proves to me I could start as a, you know, seasonal employee and work my way up and get a full time job within 3 months and like all these things that people told me were impossible. I made it happen. So then I pivot, and that's its own story as to me going back to my first love, which is hair. I was hired at a salon. At this salon is one of the coolest people I've ever known. She's an immigrant from Iraq, and her thoughts on all of that and her story and how gosh darn much money she makes at that chain salon that people turn their nose up to simply because she's grateful. So I was hired there. And so the chance to work with her during that time in my life was like a big deal. But I did not like the interview process. I didn't like the management there. I was suffering in my personal life, and this person had previously judged me like, you're a stay at home mom. You don't have to work. He takes care of you, and you're not going to put your heart and soul into it. And so here this lady was in the interview process, seeing me and hearing my story that I needed a job and I was going to make it. Right. So she hired me, but I still was like, oh no, I don't like that. And so I sat on it for a second and I was like, you're going, Jo Beth, you're going to this salon that you used to pass on the way to Amazon, and you're going to ask them if they're hiring. And um, for me to give up working next to this person from Iraq, who is the definition of love and gratitude, and a different perspective than the way that we think about people like her. For me to turn that down is a big deal, but I listened to my intuition. And so I got a job at that other salon, and it's exactly where I should have been. So I'm fascinated by my own ability to listen to my intuition, and I am fascinated by people and their stories. Like so and so had a dream, and she needed to go across town to this place, and the next day most people would be like, oh, I'm not gonna do that. That was silly. And so lo and behold, this particular person drove to this store to buy Velveeta cheese. Her name's Charlotte Brown. And like on the way, she's vegan. Why did she go buy Velveeta cheese? Shit, like, who cares? Like I don't. But on the way there, she literally tells a story that she was passing by this little establishment, and somebody was putting a for rent sign in the ground. I have chills talking about it. Like those types of things happen in everybody's story. And at this point in my life, I see more coincidences and more peace and more um, abundance. Abundance to me means having enough and being able to sleep at night, having peace and joy in your heart. But I see that so much in my own story with that very real muscle I've learned to work, which is my intuition and pivoting. And the past 3 years have shown me that I'm right. I'm right. Like there's a lot of things that I've done sorry, in the past few years where yeah, I'm like, this is how it's going to be because I deserve it and you deserve it and we all deserve it. And so it is going to be how this happens in my life. So, and I love talking to people. I mean, like you and like how we met and like
Yeah.
all these different things. Like the miracle of that is is what reminds me that like heaven is here, I think sometimes. And it's in the way that we connect with ourselves and each other. And so, um, I don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg for me, but like
So that's the
it
miraculous pivot is the intuition. And I totally get that because I could share, oh my God, there's so many stories. I don't even know that I've told you about them. There's so many stories that I have similar to what your friend experienced going to get Velveeta cheese. Um,
Right.
yeah, and I mean, and to your point, yes. And my biggest question though for you is most people struggle with, and a lot of people I work with struggle with it, is intuition.
Mhm.
How do I
Mm.
work with my intuition? How do I know what my intuition is? So how did you know, right, that it was your intuition, and how do I tap into that and allow it to guide
'Cause
me?
yeah, I love this question. Thank you for asking me because you know in your body,
Mhm.
you know. So here I was at 3. My entire theology changed when my daughter was 3 years old. And I'll save you the whole story, but I asked her a question, basically asking her, um, what happens when I'm not here when you sing songs about Jesus, okay? I'll leave it at that. And she like whipped herself around in her Dora the Explorer dress, all ripped, her hair that was just stuck to her head, she barely had any. And so there I was asking her a question about like, how do you handle, these songs about God that you're hearing when you go to church with me when I'm not here and you sing them and what happens? And she turned around and she was like, God is in my heart and therefore I sing. And I was like,
From the mouths
and
of
and
babes.
yeah, and it's like, from the beginning that love is what binds. And
Mhm.
then it was in that moment where even though it was many chapters ago, theologically and relationally and emotionally, physically in my life, it was a moment where the past theology I had that we're born in depravity, like, no, that is not true. And I've always known that's not true. And she was like, you're bringing me your fear, Mom. And I'm here to tell you that I sing because of what's inside, and I don't care
Right.
who doesn't like it. And so she basically like handed me back my own mutedness. And she was like, yeah, that theology you heard all those years and that very conservative Baptist place, like that ain't true, Queen, because I'm 3 and God is in here and therefore I sing. And so that was really like that was really the starting point for me to uncover intuition. And then a large part of that is understanding codependency and
Mm.
understanding that people really do enjoy causing you to question yourself. And it's not like they're sitting back scheming, I'm going to make her
Right.
enjoy this. It's like their own programming, their own trauma that they have a hard time touching, and I saw that in many emotionally unhealthy adults. I saw that in lots of women who hid behind spirituality, but they were so emotionally abusive. It was just a fact. We would all wince when they would beat the shit out of their kids at the dinner table for the love of God. Like there's so many things. And so, and that was a lot of what I just said, but there's so much covering up that we do to keep ourselves in line and to keep people in line, that healing codependency and understanding that like I will not bend over backwards for people who don't give a care how I feel, and they don't hold space for my own humanness. So I will start doing the work to understand this feeling in my body when I'm around this person I've known from birth and they are so dysregulated and they get supply from other people because they don't have any inside compass.
Mhm.
I just started to get very curious about that. And so I started therapy it was like 2018, where something happened and something happened very um, just unkind and not okay emotionally in front of my children. And I was like, yeah, no, that will not happen here. So
Yeah.
if you can't talk to me like in this emotionally healthy way, you're going to have to stay back for a hot minute, maybe forever. And so I got myself into therapy and started healing codependency. So I think that is a huge part for me personally because you have to learn how to sit with yourself. And even now, like take a deep breath and just to figure out what I need. So sometimes you say what you need and you just let it sit. And if you were around a lot of chaos in the form of adults as like a child, then you don't know how to say what you need. You're always in
Mm.
survival mode. So, healing codependency is huge for me because you have to tap into like what's in here. And it's still a journey and I'm still on it. But and you become aware of the systems and the people that thrive and get supply off of muting you. And there's many different ways that happens, you know?
Yeah. No,
Um,
and that's a great share because I think it's important. I've worked with a lot of people that are like, "Oh, I'm not intuitive," and just let me throw this out to the people. Intuition comes in many different forms. There's a lot of different
mhm,
clairs. Some people hear things, some people see things, some people feel things, some people just know. I'm one of those that just know. I just know what I know. I can't tell you why I know it, but I
mhm,
just know what I know, and I get signs, and there's ways to test that and look at that, and so if you guys are interested,
totally.
drop some comments below. We'll address that. But I
Yeah.
think was that I've had a lot of people on this podcast, right? There's roughly probably I would say the last 5 or 6 that are so
Mhm.
interesting because that was never my intention. Where religion, they've all come from some type of deep religious families and religious backgrounds and religious upbringings that it really was an obstacle because I don't want to
Mm,
say a barrier because I believe that these things help us create who we are and who we come into, right? Whether we like them or
totally.
not. But
Totally.
it's definitely an obstacle when you're dealing with intuition or consciousness or different
Yeah.
because church for the most part doesn't doesn't really like that, astrology or any of that stuff. It's kind of like, you should
Oh,
stay away from that. That's devil's work. So was that something that you had to deal with within yourself to connect to that?
oh my goodness. My entire life changed when I started to journal at the full moon.
Mm.
And my thought process behind that is that we owned a lavender farm, and I spent a lot of my time throughout the weeks tending to a garden in a lavender farm, which is an absolute gift to have your hands in the soil in that way. So before we go any further, I wanted to tell you that, like, as you're talking, I was thinking about the things that you hold, right? And the other day, as I was recording something, I said an influence. So those things influenced how I thought about myself, like those circles I was in. It influenced how I related to other people. It influenced how I saw my own body. It absolutely influenced my eating disorder. It absolutely influenced who I married. Like there's just so many things that influenced. And in that same breath, I mentioned Jewel Roberts at the beginning of this. My great grandmother. There is this beautiful crystal bowl that I hold in my life, especially over these next 3 months as I do some real like work on myself, to know that like good happened to me there. Right. So like um so much of my life, even though people have opinions on how I live my life now. So much good came from that. My children are here because of who I met, and my best friend Sabrina is in my life, and there's a lot of truths about love that I learned about in those times. Um, so growing up in the South, you hold Christianity close to your heart, and then you also use the farmer's almanac. So as I'm digging a hole with my grandfather, and he was like, oh, is it a full moon? Well, if it's a full moon and we're digging a hole, then there won't be enough dirt to go back in the hole. And so here I am 7, like, well, I'll be damned, he's right. Full moon, and we just dug this hole, and now there's not enough dirt to go back in the hole. Wow. And it
Why
was
is there not
more of
enough?
a
Wait. Why is there not enough dirt to go back in the hole because of a full moon?
I might get that wrong. I might get that wrong, but like there was a time where he was like planting something, right? Like a seed. And
Right.
he literally was like, the moon is so and so. So it was either the hole wouldn't have enough dirt, or you would go to fill up the hole and there would be too much dirt in the hole. And I forget it, and I'll have to like look it up, but like the farmer's almanac was what people used.
Yeah.
And, where the moon was directly correlated to like the amount of dirt in the hole. And like every damn time it was right. And so, I started to, my word for the year in 2020 was green. I was going to figure out what the hell was wrong with my life in 2020. And it was the first year I came up with a word talking about intuition, and it like slapped me in the face. Like your word is green, girl, and your word is green because you have this big, wonderful house and you have this life that everybody, this is like the American dream, right? And it looks wonderful on the outside. And you're going to figure out what the hell is going on with your life. Like you've done the work, you're doing the work. And so green was my word. So um, green to get out in the field more
Mm.
and work the lavender farm with my family. Green because I didn't give a care anymore about how big a tree is. I've been around a lot of women in the South that their tree is so big. Oh, but they ain't got no roots. And oh, we look so great. When I was a little kid, people would tell me, okay, we're about to get vulnerable here. People would say, you had two beautiful parents. And yeah, I mean, back in the day, they were pretty, um, good looking people. But
Like
I knew
what
at an
size?
early, yeah, I mean, we're going there, but like looks wise, I'm from a small
Okay.
town, and this guy, good looking guy, this good looking girl, they get together. Oh, they're so good looking, and even looking back on things like, um, my dad's blue eyes are still electric. I have to like roll my eyes sometimes when I get around him and older women because they're like, oh, Richard, like he's just a very electric guy. But like growing up in a small town, and I knew from the beginning that like it doesn't matter. The outside doesn't matter. The inside matters. Is
Right.
what I'm trying to get at. So green that year was like, I don't give a care what the outside looks like. I'm not here to be perfect. And anyway, I'm here to dive roots down. And so I started to journal at the full moon, and I started to look up what past civilizations used to think of during certain moons. And so, for instance, the strawberry moon in 2020 was the first time I sat out under the moon and I just journaled and I released, or I, sent out prayers, or I, was honest about like some things. And it changed my entire life really. And so it's been a lot of chapters since then, but to unwrap the shame in my body as a woman, to get curious about an attraction I had for a friend of mine. Thankfully, I had done the work already to unwrap shame in
Mm.
regards to my sexuality, to understand that my person was actually my person, and I felt it in my body. Like this is stuff I don't really share a lot, but I remember the molecules in the room when I saw this person. And um,
Wow.
it's a feeling and it's something that you can work on. But it is really beautiful whenever you hone that intuition. So, like the word of the year, it always comes right to me and it always feels right. And there's typically, Joe, our friend Joe,
Mhm.
right? That year, like there's just so much. Like I participated in something with him. He didn't even know me. And he had this like vision that he saw a tree and there were three words on the branches of that tree. And so he didn't know that my word for the year was green. And I wanted deep roots. I wanted roots that hold in all seasons. And so it's those type of things that happen that help you to connect on the inside. But I will be unwrapping what I learned about my body, about sex. People don't talk about that enough. Purity culture really has messed up lots of people and lots of marriages, like for real. Um, and for guys and girls, the way that they talk about all kinds of things that are normal bodily functions is absolute patriarchy, that keeps all people from connection and connection to their bodies. So I'm pretty, I'm, I'm getting more spiritual and like feminine all the time. My family knows it. um, our cycle matches the moon, and astrology is really fascinating to me. And so it's been a process to just uncover the rhythms of our bodies in connection to everything else. And I've loved it, and it's amazed me in lots of ways. And I'm grateful to continue to do the work um, in that way. So that's a lot, but
Yeah, but so 2020, right? That's the pandemic hits in 2020.
yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah.
it
Oh,
changed
yeah.
aspects of how we interact and connect, right? Because everybody's now, you've taken away
Oh, yeah.
physical facial reactions, which are like 85%, don't quote me on that, of how we communicate is actually nonverbal. You know what I mean? So you've hidden a lot of that.
Mm,
So, and I know you do hair, so you're dealing with clients. You guys, I always say you guys are stylists and therapists all in one, but that's a whole other
yeah.
topic. But
Yeah.
so my question to you is, what were some of the most significant changes you observed in conversations and interactions with clients during the lockdowns and the pandemic? Because now you've got this new word green, and now you've
Yeah.
thrown a whole new container.
See, well, you don't even know this part about me, but the start of 2020, I was married.
Okay.
I had been a stay-at-home mom. Um, Hair was something in my past that, for various reasons, I didn't think I could ever make it on my own. Or hairdressing and being a hairdresser is just something I was too stupid or too uneducated to do anything else. So, like, I was a stay at home mom, and I
Right.
had been that way for 10 years. I'm a pandemic divorce. Yeah,
Mm,
the world shut down. The world shut down, and there was already a lot of quiet. And the way my life was lived, in the form of like parallel um, relationships, right? Going through the motions. And August of 2020, I just decided that the quiet had really shown me a lot. I realized what the outside world did for me. Um, it gave me a lot of kindness, connection, communication, things that I need out of life. And I really did a lot of journaling during that time. I really did. So let's fast forward a little bit. And I move out of the house, which that's its own story. South Carolina is a very interesting place, and there's parts of my story where, yeah, I moved into my own apartment, and so I got the job at Amazon. Like I said,
now, was
I
this
was there.
after the pandemic?
No, this is like 2020. This
Oh,
is
wow.
like
Okay.
lockdown March, April, May, June, July, August hits of that year. And I had read a few books. I had done a lot of soul searching. There was a lot of downtime at that house. So a lot of beautiful memories with my kids, and what we did, but a lot of reality. So a lot of reality. And I counted on the outside world for a lot of connection, kindness, all the things. And I thought in my heart, yeah, that doesn't really, yeah. So 2020 is a gift.
Yeah.
And so yeah, 2020 was where I went to Amazon. That was a powerful time in my life. I was hired on only seasonally, so I was only guaranteed 12 hours. I didn't realize at the time that when you're hired on seasonally at Amazon, you aren't given the option to work up. You have to be a blue badge employee. So here I was only guaranteed 12 hours, but hustling to put 40 hours, pick up extra shifts to make it on my own. I was doing it. And I was very grateful. So that taught me a lot. And then something happened where I was told I needed to get a daytime job, like straight up, for some reasons. And so I did. And I will say it forever that just like I told that story, and that salon, the way my mind works, the way I was really going through some hard things personally. Some days with the inability to move my arms which with me sharing part of my story, there's a little bit of fear tied up in that, but it taught me I was an empathetic person before.
Mhm.
And there were days I couldn't move my arms. I was in so much pain and out of my comfort zone. I got married when I was 21 years old. And here I was, lots of circumstances that were hard, but I was determined to help my kids through this time. And I was determined to hold myself to a standard to not hand them any more pain other than what was they were already handling. And so that salon was something. I was surrounded by people who were LGBTQ, and that didn't look that way. Um, I was stationed right next to somebody who was this big giant personality who did hair in the 80s and 90s in Dallas, Texas, and like Deion Sanders and like all these people. And this person like love him so much, and then he and I would go at it because I didn't. He was a person who had done a lot of like self help and AA and like he's one of the people who was like, you should read The Artist's Way, the book I'm reading right now. And but also too, he would come in with his like, oh, nobody stands up to me. I'm this big personality. And one day he did something really not okay. And I was like, hey, me and you were gonna talk outside. I was like, you don't do that shit to me. Like it's about respect around here. And so like, but what I'm getting at is I had a front row seat. I needed to be around somebody that reminded me that journaling was okay. And I'm going to leave it at that. But I really needed to be reminded that journaling was a part of self help. And here I was next to this wonderful bear of a person that had journaled every day for 40 years as somebody who wasn't the most religious, but started out every day for 40 years, dear God. And he would talk about this with people. And it was like a moment where it was like, okay, Jo Beth, you are in this place. You did a brave thing. Holy crap, it was right based off of how things are playing out. You were right, Queen. Like, woo, out we go. And it's like, I needed somebody to talk to their customers about journaling. That being said, my point, there was a rhythm to every day in that salon. Okay. There was a rhythm. I saw people that didn't know me. So they'd come in and it was a rotation. So they'd sit in my chair, right? And there were times where I had journaled that morning something. Um, a good example is I journaled that morning about the footprints in the sand and that poem about Jesus is walking with
Right.
somebody on the beach. And so I was thinking that morning, I'm like, holy shit, that poem is about Sabrina. Oh my God. So, I don't know. I don't make the rules, but like she's carried me. God, like there was one day where I couldn't move my arms. I was so sad and so pissed that like this all was happening when it didn't have to. And so I thought Sabrina's carried me. Okay. So then I get to the salon, my very first customer of the day, widow, wonderful person. He sits in the chair. He turns around to look at me and he says, you know that poem, The Footprints in the Sand? And I was like, yeah. He's like, cool poem. And I was like, bah, yeah. And so, like, things like that would happen to me. I met two celebrities, two powerful entrepreneur celebrities. They sat in my chair and I watch enough reality TV to be like, oh, we're about to have a master class in here. But so it's like I would always have the people that we needed to have
Mhm.
an energetic exchange. Or, a lot of those times I would tell my best friend and my partner, I would be like, well, today the universe gave me Cincinnati. Like everybody talked about Cincinnati. I don't make the rules. This is crazy. But like so and so went to school there. So and so was from there. Um, I think one of my favorite times is there was this guy who I'm from St. Augustine area. You went to the
Yeah.
Columbia. Um, my favorite restaurant. It's like home to me. He came in, I cut his hair, and we just started talking about Florida and the Columbia. And he's like, you know what's so crazy is like there's a restaurant I went to last night in Charlotte called Calais Soul, and it's based off the Columbia. And it was like that little soul moment where it's like the universe. I don't know. He came in, he told me I went there for my birthday. It's a way I can touch home.
Yeah.
And so it's like things like that. It just reinforced that now more than ever, also because of what I have gone through and because I'm getting older and I'm not a surface kind of girl. We would ask conversations or like ask questions in the salon, and I would give people a minute to be honest about how their holiday was, right? So I would say, how was your holiday? And if it sucked, I can hear about that too.
Yeah.
And you know the people that there was just numerous times where I just realized that like something bigger than us is all around. And the marvelous miraculous part is that it's connected to what we do. I journaled that morning, as a form of like, I'm breaking out of those old evangelical boxes, and like my best friend carried me, so call it Jesus on the sand, I don't know, with Sabrina, reminding me, all those years that I wasn't crazy, that I was human, and I would make it through. In fact, one of those days, I have it in my closet. I called her and I said, am I going to make it through this? And she said, yes. And she's like, whenever I was having my son, the nurse said, you're fighting the contractions, Sabrina. Stop fighting them. Like, let them roll through. And because you got to stop this. Like, it hurts so much. You're so pissed. You're so broke. You're so all these things, even though you lived your life the way you have. And here you are. And she's like, you've got to stop doing that. You've got to flow through it. And so I wrote down, feel it, move through it, stand on the other side. Um, so I mean, you and I have talked, like intuition is very much on point, and it's starting to like amaze me. And then sometimes it's like, oh goodness, my energy is just like, I'm not for it. Like, I don't know. So it's like, I don't, but it is beautiful. And I love exploring that with my person. Like, there's so many things. Love feels good on your heart, and it feels good in your body. And there's people like you in my life that remind me that, like, this and this was never wrong. And this and this and this might have been in situations where I was told it was wrong or made fun of for all my feelings. But like this and this, when like wrapped in stillness, knowing that, like, yeah, I've been through some things for real. And yeah, I don't like to be pessimistic, but I've seen some things for real. And what do I do with it? And then remembering that, like, breath is prayer. And I was told all those years ago, evangelically, I would see miracles beyond comprehension. And it's like, well, I stepped away. I stepped away from you guys, and I see lots of miracles. I see lots of miracles in like you being my friend,
Mhm.
and understanding that everything I have lost, um, every person that is no longer in my life, it's a lot to feel all of it and to understand that, like, the true things always rise up.
And it,
And
go ahead.
yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go
No,
ahead.
no. What I was going to say is I think it's important, like you said, I don't like spiritual bypassing. Do you know what I mean? A lot of people do that. And so I think
Oh,
when you
yeah.
say I've seen some things, it's like, we've all, a lot of us have been through a lot of dark things. And, I forget the exact quote, but it was like I was given a box of darkness and realized that was a gift too. And
Mm,
understanding that you have to walk down those
mm,
streets and you've got to understand that there's a gift in that. And and that's essential part of this. And I think that's what a lot of people miss is like, when you say spiritual, it's kind of gotten tainted. Anybody says spiritual of like love and light and happiness, but that's,
Mhm.
that's not true spirituality. True spirituality is sitting in the shadows and going, okay, I can't see anything. It's pitch black. I don't know how I'm going to get out of
Yeah.
this. And I'm going to create some type of light to at least light up this little area and just feel what I feel
Yeah.
until I can take another step.
Yes. And I have some tears in my eyes with you saying that because you have to be able to sit with hard things. And I did sit with hard things in a journal for a
Yeah.
lot of years. And that is a healthy thing to do. That is a way of realizing I will not be the mother I had, period. That is saying I now hold all parts of myself. Now I understand the death and resurrection process. I really do. Um, even though I wish things would have been very differently over the past 3 years, it has shown me a lot about myself and about the fact that I don't want to say I needed because even that's still hard to hold, but like I have been very, very, very much alone. Even though I have a loving partner who is amazing, but like I have done the work to sit by myself in very dark times while other people are saying I deserved the pain for being honest, powerful, like all the things. So like I have weathered some things where I have felt that darkness, right? Or that pain that just rips you through. And I have seen the fruit of what happens when you'd rather sit alone than live a life full of bullshit. I'd rather sit alone and have, my children watch me authentically hold hands with somebody who loves me unconditionally, no strings attached, like whatever. And that's been a beautiful journey. But like, we are not taught that whenever we are good girls for God. You are taught, like, you are taught to fear the number three, right? Um, I was taught to. So, like, Sabrina went on choir tour. Everybody was waking up at 3 o'clock. And, talk around the youth group is like, people are praying to Satan at 3 o'clock. And so that's why you guys are waking up. So here's something I've never shared is I would see 333 all the time. And I would be scared. And our friend Jude sat down with me in June of 2020. And she's like, no, you need to take evaluation of like when you're seeing that number, like
Right.
when you're seeing that number, like what are you choosing? Like what are you thinking about that you're wondering if you should go for it? Like there was one time where I was presented with some BS and I could have said, "You know what? F you. You're stupid and I'm tired of this." But like something happened. I turned around, I saw 333, on the oven, and I thought, you're just going to turn around and you're going to go write a poem. Okay. I've never shared this. I went outside rather than getting ugly with somebody, I just turned around, took the high road, went outside, wrote a poem for the first time in about 25 years. I came inside to have an inbox message from somebody who's recently passed, part of my ex husband's family. This person was the definition of a goddess, like artsy, just beautiful. She says, Jo Beth. Okay, so I've seen 33, taken the high road, gone outside, watered myself, written a beautiful poem, come back into a Facebook message that says, Jo Beth, I had a dream about you last night. I really think that you need to start a podcast. I think that you have a way of expressing things to people that really matter. This is nuts because I don't even know what podcasting is all about nor where to find them. Love you. So it's like, I mean, when I have the courage to powerfully say, no, I'm not doing this with you. Yeah, we don't have any peanut butter and jelly in the house. It is what it is. Okay. I'm going to turn, 333. Oh, okay. I'm going to go outside and write. And then to have that confirmation is like, it starts to become fun because um, we weren't taught that. We were taught to fear our bodies. We were taught, shame around our sexuality. Thank God I had already done the work to not, pass up the love of my life in there, who is so much, it's beautiful, and it's like, yeah, we are taught so much, and it's called patriarchy, and it's called a way to control for authoritarian systems. Like, I can keep going, but it's when you tap into the power of your body and that and the connectedness of all, you're called a heretic, or you're made fun of, or you know something means something to you, like a butterfly or like a bird, specific bird, and you're thinking about some things, or you're journaling, and that bird shows up, and you're like, wow, the awe and wonder that we're taught of, like, the love and peace and mercy. And like, I started reading a lot about how Jesus was a mystic, and I started reading about other things which you're warned against. And then those people who want to tell you about all this love, they're the ones that heckle you because you see a bird, and it's like, in the universe, God love is that intricate. And I have seen that time and time again. Like, there was a day when I was newly separated where I thought, holy crap, I'm going to need a set of clothes for these children at my home. What am I going to do? This friend calls me up, and she's like, you will not believe this shit. She's like, my ex-husband, or ex-person, baby daddy, not a good relationship. We ain't friends. He sent me a message, and we don't have boys in this family, all right? It's nothing but girls. And she's like, he's bringing over two bar stools. I needed bar stools. I wanted white ones. They were white. And 4 bags of little boys' clothes, size 8 to 10.
That doesn't surprise
So,
me. I mean, I get that, all the time. My mom and stuff. Like, isn't that crazy? And I'm like, no, because that's how
right, it's
things work.
beautiful.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it's
how things
beautiful.
work.
Like, yeah, I feel like I'm talking a lot and I'm being a little vulnerable. So,
No, 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 that's good. I think this is important to touch on because I think it comes up a lot, and it's interesting when I have these conversations because we tend to get in these topics of like them versus us or me versus them. And so something that popped up, I know when I was on your podcast and it was a clip you played, but I think is an important question, right? Is finding common ground. It can sometimes seem challenging, especially with people that we don't
yeah.
necessarily agree with or vibe. But
Yes.
can you give me an example, whether it's personal or professional, where finding that middle ground for you led to an unexpected or magical outcome?
Um, yes. So, I will tell you that part of the next 90 days of my life, where I'm stepping away from putting out podcasts and I'm focusing on like the beautiful rhythm of my life, um, is to get away from things, pessimism of my past evangelical ways of thinking. So I want to say that first. I've been very specific to get those people, those deconstruction people, off of my timeline, because it makes me cynical, and it makes me fearful of, the wolves in sheep's clothing. Um, so I want to say that in this season of my life, I know for me personally, it's time to step into a new way of ministering to myself spiritually, and, God willing, ministering to other people in a spiritual way. So very strong boundaries around that. Um, I mean, there's so many different ways. I see how much that way of thinking hurts people, especially women. Um,
What way of thinking?
to be a servant for God,
Okay.
and like, we're taught to, pray, 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 and it's like, no, queen, you should make the therapy appointment and like say, I'm going to be there, and I don't give a care if you're going to, like, please come, because there are ways of communicating that require connection and introspection, and that world, in my experience, doesn't allow for that. There's a lot of spiritual bypassing there. There's a lot of like getting on your knees to pray, but like not truly taking care of the single mom who works in the church nursery,
Mm.
right? And it's it's the way that they exploit people to work for free in these systems, or the way that I led a Bible study, in 2019, and they were like, "Well, Jo Beth's lost a bunch of weight. She seems to have like a good handle on food and body. Let's let her lead a Bible study with these other women." And the co-leader was about as crazy and unhelpful in body and food as it gets. I met my friend Deb Lewis, who recently passed away. So she's the gold that came out of that. But it was very much a time where I was like, none of these ladies want healing. They don't want healing. They don't want to look at the inside. And so it's been a journey. I think a question, like curiosity, comes to mind. So I think I want to say that. I think I want to say that in that salon, you grow up evangelical in the South for sure, definitely over here in the West, militarism, capitalism, all these things are tied in with the Jesus story. And so you don't have to look far, you see it everywhere. And in that salon, I would say, really, I mean, I worked there for 2 years, 15 to 20 haircuts a day. Like, I saw lots of people, 40 hours a week. Um, every single time we didn't talk about the things that divide. So, like, somebody would come in, it was Sunday, they came from church, they wouldn't, yeah, I mean, anyways, people that I would kind of like, take a step back from, or might not be affirming, or whatever, or the beautiful like Muslim man that came in, or the all these different people. Whenever you strip all the things away, we all want the same things. So like that was really powerful to me, and the power of a question. So like sometimes people would come in and like I could tell right off the bat that like they were not picking up what I was throwing down. And then they would tell me about their beautiful millennial child who like has a tiny house and who doesn't have any debt and who grows their own vegetables. And you have this boomer man of a certain color and way of thinking, and like I loved that, where I would just be like, on one hand, sir, you're saying this world's headed to shit, right? And on the other hand, you're telling me that your millennial is not going to have to pay off a house for like 30 years, and is growing their own food. So like, why are they crazy again? Like, and I loved that. And I think I understand that I have the gift of that. There were two times where the energy of those haircuts was not good. And one was I knew immediately, talk about energy, that he was going to be icky, because he said, "Oh, finally the cute one gets to cut my hair." And I felt like, "Oh, this guy, he's going to get a 5-minute haircut." Like, gross. And so he sits in my chair, and come to find out, he's a pastor of a mega church around here. And it was a learning experience because it was very, very icky. Like, it was very icky, and it was a big learning experience as far as like holding space for myself. So let me get back to it. Whenever, and that was only two people out of like thousands, but and the other person was also in that world. So um again, I won't become cynical. So I guess to answer your question, I loved sitting down with you the first part of the year, because to see people's humanness is what I am so glad to hold in my hands. So I'm so glad to be at this place in my life where I can be human. I don't have to like judge myself for every feeling theologically, or with a partner, or with anything. I just get to be human. And then I keep seeing, deeper connections with my children, deeper connection with our children together as we're creating this like family of safety. I get to see the humanness in people. And I think part of this 90 days is to step away from the noise, because I can get real caught up in these friends of mine who love Jesus so much. And they put out this stuff about immigrants and about refugees. And it's like, I got to get people like sitting next to these people who will tell them that like most people are so freaking grateful to be safe and to make a living for their families that they pay off the debt the government gives them far faster than they're supposed to because they want to do right and they are grateful. And so in this season of like polarity, right, I'm doing some real work to see the humanness in myself and the humanness in other people. And I'll be the first to tell you, like, because of what I've been through, because of, you know, the people who intentionally spit on me in this community when I was going through a very challenging time, coming out that I was dating a woman, like, I am finding grace for people in a new way because I can find grace for myself in a new way. And so when you told me, like, if you can't get up from that dinner and, you know, shake that person's hand and find their humanness, you have work to do. I was like, I have work to do, you know? And it's like, and thankfully I get to do that work, you know? And for you to say that, like, at my core, I'm a heretic, which is interesting. So,
Yeah, and for those that don't know, which you guys wouldn't know, I'll link Jo Beth's podcast in the description on both platforms, YouTube, so you can hear what she's talking about, because it was kind of a pivotal point in that podcast, and kind of step back, but it's something that I think it's important, and why I'm doing this podcast is to show that everybody's story, everybody's perspective, everybody's journey is so vastly different. Yet the thing that we do all have in common is that we are human.
yes. And I mean, I will hug you with my soul forever, really. And because as I've been going through this, it is so valuable. It is so valuable because there's a graphic on here, and you told me that like I'm a heretic, so I'm a change agent. So like I do like have a different way of looking at things, and it shakes things up. And I like that about myself. And then I have to really, really work on alone time, and so I have to be by myself. I do. I cannot give all the time. You know, in my previous life, I would, like, every 3 months, I would take the biggest freaking nap you ever heard of. So, like, I would lay down at like noon on a Sunday and I would wake up at like 7 or something
Oh,
because I was not, for various reasons, it was a go, 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 work, 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 like work, you know,
that's how
and
we were
it's like,
told to be.
yeah, and it's like I was told through culture and people that rest was lazy. You
Mhm.
do everything half-assed, don't you? And it's like, no, I create powerfully with the love in here, and so I have to recharge powerfully. And so that day really helped me because before we had sat down in November, because of various reasons, I was moving and all these things. I was not my best self one day with just me and my partner. And it was like, I have to make space for alone time. But there's a graphic you have in here that talks about things to remember. I hope I can find it because it like gives like an outline of like the body and like things to remember, I guess, based off of your chakra. And one of the things that nobody knows about me, like nobody could know this, I have probably thought about this like every day for a really long time as I've had my own dreams to be an entrepreneur and to have a podcast and like all of these ways of spiritual connection. But one of them, gosh, I can't find it. Where is it? But it basically is attached to, okay, here it is. Okay, it's this right here.
Oh yeah, yeah. Your centers.
And the head, it said these are things that
You'll be
so
influenced.
the gold pertains to you. These
Yeah.
are things that you will want to remind yourself since you may struggle with these things and be influenced by outside energies. So this freaked my freak on so many levels because it's like, this is how we are created. And then I'll be damn, I could think of like so many relationships with other souls and people in my life that have picked at this in me or refined this in me, or like you said, like healing is not this like circle, it's like a spiral,
Spiral.
right? So
Yeah.
but the one that's connected to my head, um is I let go of the need to have completely original ideas. And so that might not sound like huge to people, but like based off where I've come from, based off of the trauma I'm healing, based off of the circumstances of the past 3 years, based off of all the, criticism or critics or my own inner dialogue or wanting to be a good girl for God and then being spit out like I've absolutely worshiped Satan because now like stupid shit, like things that were taught, you know, it's like I am a Brene Brown, Beckett, Joe, Jude, a little bit of Zig Ziglar. Like I'm all of these things because of where I've been. So, like I need to realize that I'm a collection of things up here and it's okay to let go without worry that I'm going to like cite someone or without worry that, I'm going to, it's like I do have a way of processing that is different. I mean, my memory is wild and it's okay to let things come out here and to trust the divine flow of who I am. I mean, there's your undefined centers, the white, are open to outside energies and will be your greatest assets of growth. There are some things on here that it's like,
And that's just one page.
right.
That
I'm
could be a
like,
whole nother
and it's just
podcast.
like, right. It's just very simple truths. But
Yeah.
it's like things on here that are very true in the past 3.5 years, the process of separation, divorce, and all those things. Very true of things that I need to remember. One of it's there's even one thing on here. This says, this is the gold. So this pertains to me. And it says, it's okay to feel no pressure or drive when I am alone.
Yeah. Joe has that one too, I believe. Well, because we always feel like we have to be doing, and the key is sometimes the best doing is when you're being still, when you're resting, when you're connecting.
Right. Or, I mean, I can think about this like 15 years ago, 20 years ago. I could think about it now in this season where I am rediscovering who I am as a mother, as a woman, as a 37-year-old, where I get here and like in my past life, my previous married life, I could go, 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 go. I didn't need a break. I could work
Yeah,
out to
that's
make
how
sure that I
we're
was
trained.
like,
We're trained that our society trains us as that. I mean, we've been trained to be workers. You know what I mean? That's why,
yeah,
why don't they teach finance in school? Why don't they teach you how to be wealthy? Why don't they teach you how to be an entrepreneur? They don't teach you those things for a reason. You know what I mean? And that's a whole, I mean, that could be a whole other
but
topic, but
oh, but even to just like sit still
yeah,
and like I don't live with my person. I live by myself with my kids. And it's like, because I mean it, like I will let the loneliness settle. I will heal the fact that like part of my children's childhood, they're not with me. And that's very different than what I thought. And so to sit and rest and not feel the pressure to make money for myself out of scarcity or like all these things. It's like, that is so true. And even like, when I do show up and create, or it's like, I don't have to feel the pressure because I can trust that the universe holds, that love holds. And that is so powerful to me. And it's been so helpful because anger is what in my chart is where I have to like, can you explain a little bit about anger maybe?
so what she's referencing is her human design, and anger is when you're what they say not self-themed. So when you're out of alignment, when you're not working with your inner energetic blueprint, you can feel angry. And so that can tell you when you're not
Mm.
operating how you should be operating, so to speak. And I hate to say should be, because I've had people question this and be like, well, it's human design telling you what you are. And I said, no, human design is telling you not what you are. Or I'm sorry, who you are. They're giving you a label. It's not. It's telling you how you operate. It's your energetic blueprint. It's how you show up in the world energetically. So
Yes.
it isn't a label that
Yes.
you slap on to say, like, you're a doctor, you're a whatever, you're a CEO, you're an entrepreneur. It's not like that. It's more of an energetic map or blueprint to show how you operate. So for you, anger is operating out of alignment if, and I always preference this, which is different than a lot of other human design readers. Sometimes anger can give you the kick in the butt you need to move you forward to do what you need to do. So I always say, sit with the anger and what is it trying to tell you? If you're just
Hell
angry
yeah.
because you don't like somebody and you want revenge, wrong type of anger.
Right.
Are you angry though because you're like, I don't want to live my life like this and I want a different job, or I want to be in a different, and it's kicking you in gear to go do some inspired action, then that's a right kind of
Right.
anger.
Right. Or like, oh, I get it. You love me in therapy because you have to take no accountability. Yeah. I
Yeah, but
think
what
that's
people need to understand with that is, and there's a lot of this that goes on, is what you resist persists. So as much
mm,
as we want to keep pointing fingers at other people, and I think this is important and was kind of something we were kind of touching base on in your podcast, but something I really do when I work with my clients is you have to watch when you're constantly pointing people at other fingers at other people, because there's that whole adage, when I point a finger at you, three more are pointing back at me,
right.
right?
Well, I love this conversation because it's not an anger at the person, it's an anger at the situation,
Right.
for instance. So it's like it's not a like you suck, you're not doing this. It's like an anger of like, I think we're allowed to get honest about the way that we function. And I think that it obviously serves you in some very unhelpful ways to not acknowledge the inside and whatevs. But anger does motivate me. And oh my gosh, since sitting down with you, it allows you to get curious.
Yeah.
And we went on vacation with the kids recently, and I am so like, when I think about me and my person and the way that we love our kids, it is one of the things I will be the most proud of forever, because this is about love and connection and communicating with each other in a healthy way. And so something happened, and I got curious, okay, with her and I talking. And anger is a way for me to get curious as to what I am not willing to look at within.
It's a trigger. It's a
So,
trigger. It's a marker.
yeah, and I mean, but and I have been around people that don't get curious to self-reflect,
Yeah.
and that doesn't lead anywhere good. I've done that too. Like, I'm human, but it's like the anger of, okay, for instance, before we like even started talking, I was like, what is it that like is the theme of today? Or like, what makes me me? And like, as I continue to like grow and talk to you about human design and gene keys and learn more and put them into practice, like I wrote this down. I said, I refuse to live in a world where change isn't possible.
Hmm. Change is
Like,
the
I
only
feel like,
thing that we can count on.
right. And I feel like, you know, there's been so many muscles that I have flexed and strengthened, and like muscle fibers that have been broken down over the past 3.5 years in particular. But like, I still have hope. And I might sit in a place that is in the fetal position in the closet, crying and whatever, to make sure I show up in the world like an emotionally healthy adult for my kids. But like, or I might really sit around like, wow, isn't this some BS of like what I'm watching? But I refuse to believe that change is not possible, because people have unlocked things for me. So I, I just Is pessimism the same thing as anger for me? Yeah, but I like, because inside of my heart, I don't like to be in that place of pessimism. And I don't know if it's like because what I'm supposed to do here is just to remind people that there is nothing to fear. And like evangelically, all you're handed is fear in relation to Christ. And that is just not what aligns with me anymore. But like I don't like in my own spirit being pessimistic. And I think I've seen, true sides of people, or I have stood up for myself and like it people have really not liked it, or like all these things. I can go to a place of pessimism which feels similar inside me as a motivator. And that might be to say, well, I'm feeling real pessimistic because I've done this podcast interview and I'm realizing there's a lot of bullshit going on in the world. And it's like the people warning you of the bullshit are the ones that you should be worried about. Like, and so I'm like, you know what? We're going to take 90 days and we're going to heal some things because I want to make sure that I'm my best self. Like, I want you to tell me if pessimism might show up as anger for me as a means to get curious about what needs to change.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, anger, and that's where I say in there, you have to sit with whatever that looks like for you, right? Because anger for some other person might show up differently. And the key to that, and I think this is where mindfulness comes in, and it's so important. What people don't really get about mindfulness is allowing yourself to feel the feelings, but not attached to them. Right. So that's the key of understanding. And like you said, getting curious. Okay, I'm feeling angry. Why? What is this showing me? What is it teaching me? Where people go awry is like, well, I'm feeling angry. Let me add some fuel to that fire. Let me say what a jerk you are. Let me say how this group held us down, or this person did this, or let me say how I don't like this person. It's like, that's not productive in any way, shape, or form.
Right. But see, and also too, it's like when you're in that system, like I was in, like so many women and men are in, where it's like you don't have permission to be human. Like your body and your feelings and all of that is what is absolutely bypassed spiritually
Yeah.
to keep you in this loop where you can be like, I am in depravity. Oh my God, I thought that lady was a bench today, so I suck. So let me repent. But let me never call out the lady who is really not nice and step away from her hard and fast. But let me just tell God that I repent, and let me
Well,
just
it's breaking that
like,
cycle, but the key to that, and what I remember my friend Maria, and I had her on the podcast. I loved is she's like, people are very
mm,
attached to their stories. They've set the stage,
mm,
they got the lights, they got the curtains. They're like, let me tell you. But the
oh,
reality is that at some point you have to be able
mm,
to pull yourself out of that story and understand it's just a story and go, what did it teach me? And do I need to hold on to it anymore? Because what we don't understand about human psychology is the more you talk about an event, actually, and they've
mm,
proven this, the more you are reliving the actual event over and over and over again. So what I try to tell people and my clients is, and I had a spiritual mentor who did this. She'd give you 5 minutes, 5 minutes to talk
mm,
about your story, and then she'd be like, "You're done. We're not talking about it anymore. Stop complaining about it. Stop talking about it, and move.
yeah,
And now, what are we going to move forward?" And so that's why
yeah.
a lot of times people don't understand that, right? It's you're actually reliving the trauma or the event over and over and over again when you talk about it. So at what point do you stop
Oh my
talking about
God.
it?
Totally. Totally. And like what is so interesting is like two things come to mind. Number one, in my own personal life, I am realizing, I just told this to Sabrina yesterday, that whenever I am feeling a type of way about something, I don't talk to my partner about it, or I don't call my dad, or I don't call you, or, like Sabrina, I don't need to talk about it because it makes me more angry. So I need to sit with it. I need to rest on it. And then also, too, here's something nobody else ever talks about, but like I'm starting to talk about it more. You lose community when you question systems that are built on that conversation of us versus them, or certainty, or hell, or all the like the end times are coming, it's every man for himself. Like it reinforces this in your brains, in your nervous systems, in your family lines. And so um I don't talk about this a lot, but there's very clear boundaries with family, like very clear. So, lots of people don't have access to me anymore, and I don't not like them. There's parts of me that I love them, although there is parts of one side's very unhelpful way of doing this that
Mhm.
I cannot be a part of because I love myself and my kids too much. And so it's like that is so interesting because anger is something that you have to sit with, and it's very uncomfortable. So like for instance, you can stand up for yourself and be like, okay, so get ready. Because women are like, so many women, even in dance fitness, like they have a hard time showing angry songs full of power, right? So, like that song Survivor from Destiny's Child, some of the older ladies, 60s, 70s, 80s, ooh, too angry. And it's like, no, queen, we need a real place to put it because we're not, screaming at our kids. We're not buying things to not feel. We're like channeling out of our bodies. And so you know, sometimes women, and I have a few of them in my life, where it's like they're standing up and being like, I can't do this, not one more day. We either do this or this. And, whenever like there's pushback and they're like, well, you're just being too much. It's like, no, I'm standing up for myself. I'm standing up for what is true. And that is not angry. It is called, I mean, having an opinion. It is called uh, being honest and you not liking it. And so there's so much like the conversation around anger is like such a dirty word because people don't know what to do with it. And like just like you said, you know, to hold place for humanity means that you don't hold anger at other people. It is just truly a way to get curious. So there was a giant breakthrough last week at the beach with the kids where I was talking to my partner. I was feeling some type of way. And it was basically like a childhood trigger of maybe my needs not being met. And like, it, thankfully I do the work. Thankfully we do the work to muddle these things around, to know that sometimes I totally talk to her and we like talk about things to diffuse it to where we come together, saying I'm sorry or talking about things and then moving on as a family. And then also too, because I know me, I know how I'm made up. Sometimes there's things that we've been talking about for like a hot minute now. We're not talking about it anymore. And so I know that talking to her is like my favorite thing to do in the world. But I don't do it whenever it could lead me to a place of anger that has me act out of alignment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well then, that's where it's important, right? You love languages and all that stuff play into that is understanding how people communicate too. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I think all these tools, human design, gene keys, love languages, all of that combined can help you to
Oh
learn to
my
communicate with people. Because like I was watching Pastor TD Jakes with my mom, and he was doing something on communication, and it was actually profound because what we realized is I'm an emotional communicator. I feel
God.
things a lot. I'm very sensitive, so I get more emotional. My mom is very factual. She doesn't care about the
Mm-hmm.
emotions. She's a factual communicator. Give her the facts first, and then she'll listen to the emotions. But if you give her emotions, she's going to tune you right out. It's like, yeah, 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 get to the facts.
Right.
And so that helped us to communicate with each other to understand and learn that. Because again, we all see the world through our own perspective and think everybody is like us. Whether we
Mm.
think that or not, people go, oh, I don't think that way. You do. When you interact with somebody, when you give love, show love, everybody thinks this is how I love. So I'm assuming this is how it gets back. This is how I communicate. So I'm assuming this is how they communicate. And it isn't. So it's getting curious to understand this is how I operate, right? I need a
Mm.
moment to sit with my anger. I need a moment to step aside. I don't want to take this out. And then understanding how you communicate and meeting in that middle ground.
Totally. And that, like, I wish I had this 5 years ago. Oh my God. I wish I
Yeah.
had it 5 years ago. Like I mean, whew, for sure. But then again, I give myself grace because I had the courage and the kindness and the healing along the journey, and here we are, talking about this. But it only gives way for more self reflection And at the end of the day, that's all you have control over.
Yes.
And that's like the bullshit and glory of this life is like, you know, all you have, it's like it's glorious and it's
It's the
brutal, like
journey.
brutal, you know, because it's like, you know, this is helping me not let things escalate with my teenage daughter, you know, holding space for the way that she is, my little Virgo queen, and then holding space for like who I am. And like we have had some really powerful conversations, and like I sat beside her Saturday at something, and it was something for high school, and I felt her like snuggle on my shoulder a little bit in a very authentic way. And like, yeah, this is so helpful. For instance, I'm looking right now at this same graph. It says, it's okay for me to not be spontaneous like others. I mean, I could go so many different ways with that. Like, I could go back to college whenever I'm around these like beautiful um, college friends of mine, and they're super spontaneous, and I'm not that way. I'm not that way. I don't operate in that way. So I thought something was wrong with me all those years, you know, or I have somebody, my partner's very different than me, and I can be so damn fun. I really can. But I'm not, I got to have some things in place to be fun. You know, and it's like I've been around people that have been like, "What's wrong with you?" or "Something's wrong with you." And it's like, "No, I'll be the most fun, but you're going to have to give me a second to ground myself. And trust me, you don't want me to be spontaneous and fun your way without the grounding." It's like it's like it's there are things on this. There's also something I'm not going to share that I'll share with you like privately in a session where it's like I have thought one of these things every day probably for my entire life,
Mhm.
and I have let relationships, and I have let culture, and I have let, you know, very suppressive theology cause me to question it. And like you can't make it up. And then the way my mind works based off of the miracles is like, isn't it amazing that like I had to have the parents I did? I did.
Mhm. Well, yeah,
You know, like I
your soul chooses that, and that's, and I think that's the biggest reaction I've had with clients from human design is like it was almost like most
mm,
people, all of them have all said, I feel like you see me in a way I haven't been and like this permission slip to go, I am different and
yes,
that's okay. And I felt it and my clients feel it. But I mean, you think about it, in a world filled with billions of people, you would think that would be a go-to. Do you know what I mean? To understand we're
mm,
all going to be different and we're all going to think differently. We're all going to do and be in different ways. And how do we celebrate that instead of feeling uncomfortable or unfamiliar or want to change that or don't care for it, or the list goes on and on. You know what I mean?
totally. And I feel it. Like I feel that curiosity place of unique self-expression happening in myself and in the people around me. And you know, I'm taking 90 days to do some things that I deserve. Um, you know, because I deserve to collaborate with people I love like you, and people that I can't wait to connect with more. And it's like, I think even whenever I talked to you recently and you were like, full permission to do what you need.
Yeah.
And like, and even in having this conversation with my dad recently, and, you know, I love the conversation I have with him about so much in these days. And I just was like, Dad, I hear you. Like, I hear you, but I don't function in scarcity anymore. And I'm like, and you and I both know that's a gift. We don't have to live that way. I don't have to live that way anymore. And so I get to put things in knowing that like the truest form of fun, you know, powerful self-expression and connection with other people that lights me and him up will be at the end of it in whatever way it shows up. And so, you know, even today, with apprehension of like the what ifs of this time, the uncomfortableness of changing new habits and welcoming routine, a beautiful routine in my life that starts today. Like all these different things, like it's okay. And you reminded me that what is meant for me, there is no misstep. And I think that's the biggest thing that evangelical Christianity does to people, is to sell them a solution to a problem that doesn't exist, number one, and to tell them that any misstep takes them away from the divine.
Mhm.
That's wrong, in my opinion, because breath and like whenever you hold up this material, you know, you think about people, situations, jobs, little fires that were like a little icky, and like so and so did this, and it's like when you see how you are made up of, then you like your mind is like my mind is blown at the way that we all had to have the parents I had, thankfully. You know,
Yeah.
all those two cute people back
All
in the
the
80s. They
experiences
turned 3
you
on.
Yeah, and that's what people don't realize is all the experience you've had have cultivated you to who you are now. And I think that's why I loved Tony Robbins in his episode,
Yes.
his series called "I'm Not Your Guru," where he looks at the girl and has her call her drug addicted father and say thank you.
Mm.
And
Yes,
he's
and
like, you don't get
yes.
to
Mm.
reward of all the good things and not think the bad things in your life that have also made you who you are. And they did. And I always like to say
Mm.
this thing, like everything's working out best case scenario, because it is.
Mm.
Whether it feels uncomfortable or whether it doesn't, or whether you don't like it, it doesn't matter. There's growth in this. And that's unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because people don't like to hear that, but that's how we grow as humans. It's like,
Whatever it is, love this.
right, exactly.
Whatever it
Whatever it
love
is, love this. And if you can do that, and we're here to feel all the emotions,
right, right,
not
and
just the
see,
good
and
ones.
right, and like whatever it is, love this. Well, I have experienced some earth-shattering grief, okay? So I have held up my own, little mirror that I'd print out that says, "Whatever it is, love this."
It's
And I've wanted to like punch in a pillow and be like, "This is some bullshit
yes.
that I didn't deserve," and it's the truth. And it's like that very real working out of the whatever it is, loving this, and then also understanding that, like, those spiritual bypass of like everything happens for a reason, or they're in a better place, or this, this had to happen. And you're just like the very real boundary, or the fist in the pillow privately, or to wrestle with that is so needed, because it's not a whatever it loves this. Oh, here comes Jo Beth. She's so glittery. God damn it. She's so positive. Everything always works out in her favor. And it's just like I almost put my middle finger up, because it's like, no, like that is not it. Like, um, it's that wrestle. It's that wrestle. It's the yin and the yang. It's the like you and I touched on, and we will totally talk again and collaborate in other ways, but like that Christ consciousness of like it's
Yeah, it's
a
the dark and the light. It's embracing. So when I say that, and Matt Kahn wrote a book called "Whatever Arises, Love This." That's where that comes from.
Mhm.
It's
I'm reading that.
understanding that I can feel sad and I can feel grief and I cannot want to be in this position, and I've been there. But whatever it is, learning to love that I'm being molded, and I'm going to grow from this in some way, shape, or form. But I'm going to allow myself to be angry and sad and all these things, and deal with these emotions in a healthy way. It's that, you know what I mean? It's
Mm.
finding that light in the darkness, and understanding that you're walking both. And some days will be better than others. Some days you'll be wonderful, and some days you won't. Some days you're got lots of energy.
Yes.
Other days you're cranky and tired. You know what I mean? And that's okay. It's all okay. It's all good. So
It's the rhythm of it. It's the rhythm of it and allowing it to be a rhythm.
yes,
And and that is what is so like I honestly can't wait to see, you know in 90 days where I end up, because
maybe I'll have you
it's
back
it's
in
the
90 days to see that.
yeah,
And we can,
Yeah.
we can look and see where did you come from. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I have three very specific things that are non-negotiable, and I told you that. It is my morning pages from the artist way, and that's writing. I wake up, I have coffee, I write 3 pages, and I let whatever is in here out. It doesn't matter what it is. It's not to be judged. It's not to be made sense of. It could be words, fragments,
Yeah.
feelings, plans,
Free
all
writing.
things. Yeah, and then the next is water, drinking lots of water, and the third is a walk slash movement. That's my only, like, that will happen in these 90 days, and the absence of feeling like I have to create and do something with this podcast, and some boundaries. But more than anything, like the time I have with my kids, like there's not work in the afternoons. There's not me editing a podcast in these next 90 days while they're with me. It's us cleaning my porch and me, saying, hey, hand me that hammer. We're going to hang this up. We're going to string these lights. Like it's that. And um, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that you talked to me a few weeks ago on the phone. I'm so grateful that the pessimism and the BS rose up in me and caused me to make some very non negotiable boundaries in my life. And I think the feeling of peace, really fast before we go, and I know that I have to go, and the feeling of peace you have when you sit through a dark place by yourself.
Hmm.
I think I want to say that it would have been easy to have barricaded myself in the love of my person over the past few years, right? And she envelops me with this love and steadiness. She's very opposite to me in a lot of ways. And then there's just something so powerful that happens whenever I have done the hard thing financially to have my own place. I have done the hard thing, feeling that loneliness, which is part of my human design, right? That it's okay to feel no pressure or drive. Like it's okay, queen, you got some goals, but like you don't want to have to wash dishes tonight. You want to lay on the couch and watch Sex in the City. Okay, do it. Like there is some very real peace that happens whenever you listen to your intuition and like um okay, one more thing. The
I have a final question
synchronicity.
I got to ask you. So,
Yeah, okay, yeah, go ahead. It's just I did something yesterday and I wrote something down, okay, on a grocery list. And then I look at the TV not 5 minutes later as I'm making these, you know, courageous decisions in my life. I kid you not. I kid you not. The actress takes out 2 cans of Le Sueur peas that I am writing a grocery list for the week for my kids, right? And I thought, damn it, I'm having some Le Sueur peas with some butter and some pepper. And I just sat there, I said, I'm gonna watch this for a minute. And then there we go. Samantha pulls out Le Sueur peas in the church right there. And I thought, interesting. Like, I mean, keep making the courageous soul decisions for your own peace and then watch crazy,
well, universe is
serendipitous.
just confirming what you're doing. You know, I always say it's
Yeah,
giving us messages. It's just, are you listening? And that's what
totally.
that is. So, all right, I'm gonna finish with
Okay.
this question I ask everybody.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a big question. And get your insight right before we go. In a world constantly seeking answers, what's the most powerful question you've asked yourself that led to a profound shift in your perspective or life
Mm.
direction?
The one that comes to mind is I read a book in 2020. It's called Untamed. And by this point, I had sat and muddled. And the question was, would you want this marriage for your children? And immediately, absolutely not. And that I say that, and that's a vulnerable thing to say. And, you know, um, I have two good, great children, and they were created in that past part of my life. But sometimes people don't communicate very well.
Mm.
And it was a hard, fast, direct question. And I think that that same question has um, risen up in my life many times. Would you want this for your kids? No, no, actually. They will not see an unhappy, or tamed mom who doesn't feel good in the skin she's in. So guess what? You're going to throw away dieting, like for real, and you're going to start moving your body like you did whenever you were seventh grade playing basketball. So like, it's that question of like, would you want this for your kids? And like going back to intuition, there was no hesitation, absolutely not. And that's not to say anything ugly about anybody. Like sometimes things just don't work and they're not working in the best way communicatively possible. And it's like you get to answer that question. And sometimes it's like you get one life. And I talk so much about simple joy. And there might be women or men watching this. You know, I'm watching some people in my life do courageous things, and I'm giving them advice I wish I had, which is its own struggle to figure out how to be okay with it and to put boundaries around it sometimes because it feels like a lot of BS some days. But I'm watching people get curious in their own lives about what simple joy is. And a friend of mine recently was sharing with me some changes in her life, and she's like, he wears a Christmas sweater that's tacky like to work. And I I was like, that's it. That's it. I really like stickers, and I really do put them up in my truck. And my favorite one is a cinnamon roll, and it says I'm a weird dough, like cinnamon roll dough. And it's stupid and it's quirky, and it's like I like that. I want that. I want that for my kids. You know, I went when I was newly separated, I went back to Florida, and I walked into my dad and bonus mom's house. I no longer call her stepmom because she's too important to me and the story of my life. But I walked in and I saw, this sounds crazy, but I saw an Olive Garden bag. And I was like, you guys had Olive Garden? And like, yeah, last night I told your dad I really wanted some breadsticks and I really wanted that salad. And dad's like, so I stopped by and got it. And I thought, that's simple joy.
Mm-hmm.
The ability to communicate with your partner and go out to dinner or stop by and pick out takeout. And I'm worthy of that. I've always been worthy of that. And I think that, you know, people can go their entire lifetimes not being honest about things. And one there's one more thing. In talking to women, and again, I'm putting healthy boundaries in place in the salon and all those things. It needs to be, I need to protect myself and my energy and all the things, but I do love pouring into people. And recently somebody came in and they were doing something really hard while I was doing their hair. And she asked me a question and I was like, stop, read the question again and answer it. It's like a 1 to 10. So, like, I don't know the answer, queen, like you do. Um, so like, don't ask me, but like, as you're answering these questions, you're safe. Um, you're putting things into place that are going to continue to cause safe, beautiful, proactive connection. You're safe, queen. You're moving out of love. Like you're taking the steps to be loving and rational, and you're giving yourself time. And so that is gold. And so I was like, read that again and don't ask me. Like 1 to 10, what comes to your mind, and be honest, because the honesty is the only way forward. And hindsight, looking back, there are some times I really wished I would have had this and stood on my own inner knowing and truth and beauty, and self-awareness. But I can't, would you want this for your kids? And that translates to, well, then stop talking to yourself like you're a piece of shit when you're on the treadmill, ma'am. Like, you wouldn't talk like that to your kid, or you wouldn't I wouldn't say that to, if I'm having a bad day and I can hardly pick myself up, how would I talk to Beckett? I adore Beckett. Freaking great, wonderful person, soul brother of mine. How would I talk to him? And I think that people put off what they know to be true.
Mhm.
And I think my life in various ways would have ended up how it ended up. But I think the quiet of 2020 was so clear. Lots was very clear. So I just, I say so much, and I really do mean it, that so many of us have been trained for the certain answer. Like, there's no bend to it. And the end times are coming, and, people are going to be raptured, and there's going to be judgment on this earth. And it's like, I am stepping away from, I don't want to be a deconstruction podcast. I
Mhm.
do not want to be a deconstruction podcast. I know that about myself. There's a podcast called On Being, which somebody turned me on to, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And I want more of that in my life. And so the future, I really do believe this in my own personal life, in my self work, raising four kids and all the things, is for the open ended loving question. And I think that the world could heal if people could ask an open ended question without feeling the need to prepare a response out of fear, or the need to prepare a response because your theology is supreme, um, or prepare a response because you're scared of the pushback of losing community. Nobody talks about that, but like, when you start asking questions in faith communities, you lose a lot of community. And that is something I will touch in the future, because that is part of my story too. But the future is for the open ended, curiosity filled question within, and sometimes very uncomfortably, like, out. So,
Thank you, my friend.
yeah.
I appreciate you.
Thank you. I
Where can
appreciate
people
you.
find you if they want to connect?
Yes. Okay. So you can find me at jobethonthejourney.com. That's where you can see my website. You can reach out to me and tell me your story if you want. I'm taking a break with podcasting today, April 15th to July 15th. I'll be recording during this time. So if something I said, pulled up something in your heart space, and you might would want to tell your story in the future, please go there and click on that link and send me an email. I'm on Facebook at Jo Beth on the Journey podcast. I'm on Instagram at Jo Beth on the Journey. That's where you can find me. I'm a hairdresser here locally in Charlotte. I own Orange Rose Beauty, which is in Rock Hill, actually, but central. I mean, pretty located where you can get to me all over Charlotte.
I'll have all of Jo Beth's information down in the description boxes. If you guys found this episode insightful, enriching, please like, subscribe, share. Until then, stay curious, stay empowered, and keep shining your unique light. See you on the next one.
Thank you. I love you so much.
I
Thank
love
you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you. I love